And finally, let's look at the last example, example 5. In example 5, we have the example or the story of a punter in a football game. Excuse me. When he punts, if we were looking at this as the ground, okay, and he punts, and this is time, coming this way. As time goes, the ball goes up in the air, reaches its apex, and then lands. So, if you look at this picture, it's basically a parabola. And it can be calculated by the formula y is equal to negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 2. And basically what t is, time in seconds. So as we go up and come across in time, we want to know how long does this guy punt it in the air? What was his time before it landed on the ground? So if this was a parabola, basically landing on the ground means crossing the x-axis, and there's your 0 right there. So what is the value of t when that happens? So think of t as your x value in a x, y coordinate, except x, okay, is now t. Okay, so now let's find that answer right there. So to do that, we first of all we say a is equal to negative 16, b is equal to 80, and c is equal to 2. We then plug in our axis of symmetry equation. X is equal to, or in this case, t is equal to what? Negative 80 over negative 16 times 2. All right, that gives us negative 80 over negative 32. And if you calculate that out, that after dividing by, let's say, 16, divide by 16 you get 5, divide by 16 you get 2, the minus and the minus make the positive, so we got a 5 halves. So, in drawing our picture here, we know that this line right here is at 5 halves of a second, or 2.5 seconds. So we want to know exactly where that goes. Well, let's take a look at let's finish drawing our parabola. And this time, from the 5.5, or from 5 halves, we want to know that value right there. Well, we don't really need to know it, but let's see what it is. We're going to plug 5 halves into there. And plus 80 times 5 halves plus 2. And when we do that, after a lot of calculations, that ends up being 102. Okay, so 102, that's basically how high this is, right there. That point right there is 5 halves, comma, 102. All right, so now what do we need to do? We need to calculate out, well, at 2.5 seconds, let's go to 4 seconds. I could go to 3, I'm just going to jump to 4. Okay, so let's do 4 seconds. So t is now equal to 4. You got negative 16, 4 squared plus 80 times t plus 2. Oops, t is 4, excuse me, 4. And if you do that, I'll calculate it all out. I've done it already. I'm not going to show you it. It ends up being 66. So we know that at 2.5, there's 4. Right there, we're at 466. Okay? So now let's try 5. Come down here and try 5. Negative 16, 5 squared plus 80 times 5 plus 2. And that calculation comes out to be the number 2. So now we know at 5 seconds, we're about right there. We're not quite there yet. 5 and 2. And just by knowing how it works, if we could get to 6 seconds, it's going to be somewhere down here in the negative side, negative value. It's going to be a negative value. Okay? So we now know that somewhere between 5 and 6 seconds is where the ball will hit the ground. And since at 5 seconds, where we know we're only 2 feet above ground, basically we know that it happens almost immediately after 5 seconds. But there's your answer.